Hello, everybody, and welcome to Legacy's Journey, where we talk about creating what outlives you. I am your host, Cameron Williams, owner of Kinley Consulting, where we focus on strategic financial growth for marketing agencies so that they can live the dream life they deserve and not be a slave to their business. And we do that through CFO services. So, y'all know the drill. I'm always on the hunt for not good guests, but great guests. And so, we this is conference season. So we went to Funnel Hacking Live. Shout out to Russell Brunson. And I met up with a young lady that was like, hey, we should meet. And then we started talking, and it's like we were talking about the same stuff, just different sides of the coin. So we have Mrs. Carrie Flynn here. And
Woo!
y'all are going to get to meet her and hear her awesomeness. But to get it started, tell the people name, company name, how long you've been doing it, and we're going to get into the fun stuff.
All right, I'm Carrie. Last name is Flynn. Been married almost 20 years. 19 years in April. I live near Orlando, Florida. My company name is Virtual Simplicity, and I'm a fractional CMO and marketing consultant. I've been in business almost 8 years, maybe nine. I don't know. However old my youngest child is how old the business is. So she'll be 8 next year. So eight, almost 8 years old.
There you go. All right, cool. So let's start out with this one. This is a pretty good one. So let's go back 8 years ago.
hmm
And for whatever reason, you come up with this wonderful idea to start your own company. Your husband says,
Oh, he loved it. Oh my god, are you kidding? My husband is the 7 on the Enneagram in this family, and he's got all the awesome ideas. He's in sales. So he thought it was like the best idea ever. But I will say this as a caveat, I didn't start out like thinking I was going to build a company. I have to share that. I was still teaching public school at the time. My kids were like 8 years old and 4 months old. So they were really little. And I really started as a way to just have another stream of revenue. I wasn't 100% sure it was going to turn into this, what it is now. When I started, I originally thought it might just be like, I hate the phrase side hustle, but that was kind of what it was. It was like a secondary business thing. And I didn't know what it was going to become.
I mean, that makes sense because you already had a good job. You were doing something
Yep,
great. So, okay, that makes sense. So, you said he was super excited.
totally.
So, what did he say? Like, how did this conversation go? Babe, I want to start my business.
I basically said to him, because I started out in more of the operations side. I started as a virtual assistant and then became like an integrator and then started working in launches. And so he was happy because one, it was like a way to bring in more revenue, but more importantly, I think he really wanted me to have a sense of purpose and a sense of enjoyment and challenge. And I liked teaching, don't get me wrong, but there's only so far you can go with teaching to where you kind of get limited not only in revenue but you also get limited in like your ability to think outside the box and do things that are different and have new challenging experiences on the daily, and it was pretty limiting. This is all pre-COVID, so this was back when it was very different. It got a lot harder when COVID came along, but so I think he was really excited at the opportunity for me to like have something to that I liked and enjoyed and had purpose in, and that was why he was so happy, I think, about
Yeah. And funny
it.
story. I actually wanted to be a teacher
Oh,
going
really?
into college,
Oh, yeah.
but I didn't because I wanted to coach high school football because of the impact they had on my life. But
Yeah.
then I was like, man, I'm like, you can't make any money really, at least
No,
enjoy it. So I was kind of like, I don't know if I like that. So
no,
I didn't do
that
that.
was that was one of the biggest reasons why I started that business, and then why I ended up leaving it. Teaching was because of the money, honestly.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. So he's happy. So now what is year one like? Because you said you started off doing it on the side. So
Yeah.
okay, you get a client in year one.
Yeah, I had probably in the first year of business, I made probably $25,000,
Okay,
which
okay.
when you are doing it like 1 or 2 hours a day, outside of your full time job and you have two children, like that's big, that's a lot, right? So, I probably had a handful of clients. I've always kind of worked on retainer pretty much most of the time, even before I had the business I have now. So it was pretty manageable. I would have sometimes two, sometimes four clients at a time, and then would do like projects on the side here and there. So it ended up working out really well for the fact that I was doing it on the side and I didn't feel like I was burning myself out either, which was really key. Like I didn't do a lot of work on the weekends. I just did it a lot when he was gone. He travels for work a lot. So I would do it at night when the kids were in bed.
Smart, smart.
Watch it.
Okay, now you brought up the kids.
Yep.
Um, two young ladies that are doing great. So tell us. So like now we're 7 going into year 8.
Mhm.
What is life like in keeping that balance? Because of course, you just said your husband travels. You have two, and they're not tiny kids. We're talking middle school
No,
and preschool.
I
So
got
what
7
is
and
that?
15.
Yeah, so what is that like to balance that out to still give them time, but still be able to run the business at the high level that you are? Like,
Yeah.
go into that for us a little bit.
I don't really believe in balance. I used to believe in that.
Oh,
I'm not sure if meaning women especially, I will say, sometimes get told that there's like this way to have it all, and I don't think that's possible. So there have been sacrifices that have been made to on both sides of that coin, let's just say. Now I'm in a really good place where I can have much more healthy balance because I work for myself full time. The balance was much harder when I worked 2 jobs for several years. I didn't quit my teaching job right away. So it took me
mm,
a few years of kind of there was an imbalance of my family, or there were maybe was a little bit of an imbalance on the other side where I didn't get to put as a lot of effort into growing my business as quickly. But now I'm in a really good spot where my children are both in school. I have a high schooler and I have a daughter who's in elementary school. And so I can essentially do the majority of what I do in the school hours. It works out great. So I can start at 9, 9:30 and be done by 4. And it's perfect. I don't feel like I have to sacrifice time at night like I used to work. Um, I've I've worked very hard to get to a place where I can make those choices today. It was not always the case, but I feel like I've gotten a lot better about balancing that. I like what I do. Genuinely, I really do. So it doesn't feel like work all the time. But I also want to set an expectation because I have daughters that they don't have to put the extreme of that heavy, oh, your life has to be, how do you balance it all with your kids and like no, like there's going to be times where it's out of balance. Like how do you take care of yourself in those moments, and maybe you need to make some sacrifices about what you're really capable of taking on. That was a huge lesson I
mm,
learned during the years I was working 2 jobs because um I there was just a point where you're not capable of taking on
yeah.
maybe more clientele and more work. And because of that, I had to make some sacrifices about how quickly I was going to grow. And that is in the company. And that's okay. That was my decision and my path. And that was what I wanted. And I'm in that place again where we're really kind of getting ready to scale. And I am not capable of doing the workload that it will take to get there. And so there are going to be some certain decisions that have to be made about in the company, what do I do? So I've learned from the past to not to be smart about not overdoing it, on myself again.
Okay, you said a lot right there. So I hope that the people got it. For me, though, you hinted at this one part about as a woman is slightly different
Yep.
because you're like, you got to kind of make certain choices. Because can you go into that? Because, of
Sure.
course, we got women
Absolutely.
listeners and they may be like, girl, yes, talk about it. So, talk
Yeah.
about it.
It's just very as a mother too, I will say it happens to women who don't have children also, but I will say when you have children, there are just a lot of outside pressures. They're not even really spoken all the time. Some of them are just sort of unspoken pressures that you might see in media. You might see it show up in TV shows and movies and things.
Interesting. My
But
wife says
you
this
just
too.
see like uh the the pressure of wanting loving what you do for your work and wanting to excel at that, and being a human woman, a human person, and wanting to excel at that in your work. Also being
Right.
a person, wanting to improve yourself and feel good about yourself as a human person. But then you also have these other roles you fill as a woman. I have my two children. I also have a husband I've been married to for almost 19 years. And these are roles that I play and relationships that I have. And so often as a woman, your brain, the mental load that comes with that can be very challenging, and trying to balance all of those things. It's like spinning plates. And sometimes it works. You're in a good spot, everything's flowing. And sometimes you're in a growing season of your company, or you're in a maybe a difficult season financially, or just something hard happens in your family, maybe there's a death or something. And that
Yeah.
means that the balance will shift. So you can't keep up with that at the same level all the time. And so that means sometimes I've had to make certain choices and sacrifices to kind of restore homeostasis, if you will, within myself and within our family. So when my husband's dad died, we had just moved here, and it was real evident that we were all in kind of a grieving period. It was not going to be possible for me to really carry the load of more clientele and get my family settled in a new and all the different things. So I really put more energy into that. And then there's times where I'm growing my company, and there is certain requirements where I do have to put more emphasis into that. And that's a conversation that happens with my husband and I. And we talk about what that looks like and how is that going to work within our family. And so I think over the years, that's been the biggest lesson, is how do we communicate when there's sort of shifts of things moving around personally and professionally. That's helped a ton. But it happens to women, I would say, maybe in a different way than it would happen to my husband. He will experience that differently because he's a guy, he's a dad. It's just a different experience that he's having than I am.
So you're going on record to say that work-life balance does not exist.
I don't believe it does. I believe that um it is possible to have a life that is in homeostasis or balanced, but the idea that you see out in the media, I'm not 100% sure. That's kind of the you can have it all, like
Yeah,
have the
I
family.
agree.
I'm not 100% sure that that's
True.
physically possible. Just logistically, it is very difficult to do. And I do a lot of stuff because I have a husband who's traveling a lot for work on a regular basis. And I have just found that there are times where I have to make certain sacrifices. Like I can't be in two places at once. And that is what happens sometimes when you have the roles that I have and the things that I have. And I would say the same for you. Probably have experienced that too. That there you just cannot travel to a conference and also be there for a piano recital or a Halloween thing at this kid's school, or if something happens, there's sacrifices that have to be made sometimes.
Yeah, I
So,
agree. Because there was something, I think they did some type of field trip or something a few weeks ago.
mhm,
I told my wife, when she told me, to your point, like, hey, I get that you want to make every event, but there was a point in time where I was kind of, I don't want to say holding her hostage, but she was like, I feel bad because you're trying to make every one. And
mhm,
when you do that, we're trying to wait, wait, wait. And I can't do that because then the time passes. So I
yeah,
get that you want to make every single thing, but you're going to have to understand that you can't. And we'll
yep,
just have to talk about it in advance. Like, this is a big one. You got to make this one versus
yeah.
I'll take this one and don't worry about it. And
That's
I'll
what
just
we
continue,
did.
you know.
That's 100% the conversations that my husband and I have had now is, all right, which are the things that are really important? Like what are and it's really about, okay, Carrie, what are the things that you think are going to have the best ROI for you? And like we really talk about it because he genuinely takes an interest, and he's so supportive of me growing this that but he also has his own job he has to do. And so we just sort of decide, like he doesn't work for himself. So he doesn't really have a say and when he can and can't go, but I do. So I can make my choices about what are going to be the best options around his schedule and my kid's schedule. That's why
Yeah.
you don't see me traveling as much as other people do probably. Like I would have loved to have gone to the conference you just went to. But I spent 2 weeks away in September and that was very challenging. So I
Yeah.
kind of gave up the opportunity to go to a couple of events in October because of that. And that's okay. It's all good.
Yeah, and I was just thinking about that and kind of wrestling that too on the plane ride back. I'm like, man, the I don't know what it is about Q4, but
Mhm.
it seems like it's always a ton of travel because we were gone last week. We're about to leave Wednesday.
Yeah.
Then I think we leave like November 29th and December 1st. So I was like, all right, Cam, you're gonna have to kind of chill out because
Yeah.
Nana's here, which is great. They get time with Nana, but
Yeah.
they your kids, they
I
want.
totally understand. Yep. They actually got mad at me because I'm the one that's home more. And they were like, why have you been gone so much? I'm like, it just, I was only gone for 5 days, but it was like a whole thing. So I do take that into consideration that they need me home with longer gaps. So I think about all of that stuff when I make choices. So I don't try to stack them back to back to back because that
And
would
see,
throw the
in my
whole.
head, I thought that was smart. I'm like, okay, do this,
Oh,
this, and
me
this.
too.
Yeah,
Horrible.
I'm
It
thinking
was,
now.
"I'll never do that again." They got really mad
Yeah,
at me.
I'm like, Cam, you may have to be a little bit more selective going into
Yeah,
2024.
you just live and you learn. That's been my experience lately.
Yes, yes. Okay, cool. So now we got that. Now, with you traveling and having,
Mhm,
I'm gonna say a successful business. I'm gonna throw that out there on record. What do you hope the kids will get from this path you're blazing? Because to your point, it wasn't easy. I had to work. Well, first I was a teacher, and I had to work two jobs because it was a side hustle. Then I got it to the point where I can completely leave it, but I'm still
mhm.
trying to be a great mom and be active and attentive. So, what would be a few things that you hope they would get from your example or your modeling?
I think the biggest thing, because they're girls, is that I hope they see what's possible for them, that they
Nice.
have options. Um, I got into teaching not because I loved it, but because it was safe and reliable. And
Oh,
it's a very I love my parents, don't get me wrong, but I was raised by baby boomers who are very conservative in their finances and they are big on having a good job that has retirement and benefits. And so that's how I ended up in teaching because it was a it was really fit at that time back in 2005. That was the answer. So that it fit that kind of mold. Um, so I want them to see what good risk taking can give to you, and why it's
mm,
important to not just consider what is considered safe and secure and reliable, but also your purpose and what you're good at and what your talents are, and also what you really like to do. Like
yeah,
you're only around we're here for such a short time. Like you shouldn't be spending 15 years of your career like I did in a job that doesn't give you, enjoyment and purpose. Now, I know that not every day in my company is delightful. There are hard times, but it gives me a really good sense of purpose. And so that's the biggest lesson I want my daughters to see is what's possible for them. And secondly, the options that they have, that they don't have to just go straight to college and then go to this. Like there's so many more opportunities that they can choose to do. Um, I don't necessarily care to be like a hero or anything like that, but I want them to see what's possible and the legacy that I'm trying to leave for them. My grandmother and my mother were both entrepreneurial, and so
nice.
I'm trying to kind of leave that sort of legacy for them of women that have sort of blazed that trail for me. Both of them did that for me, so I want to kind of give that to my daughters too.
Okay, so in wanting to give them that, so if they said at 18 they graduate high school and they say, "Mom, I don't want to go to college. I want to work with you because I want to do what you do." Are you sending them to college anyway? Are you giving
No,
them the keys to the kingdom? How are you handling that?
not that either. Um, no, I've been really open, especially with my older daughter, that if she doesn't want to go to college, she does currently, but if she didn't, we would support her. If you want to go to a trade school or you want to go just start working, like awesome, like good for you.
No, working for you.
But if they came to me and said they wanted to work for me, I actually am kind of like hesitant to work with family. So, but I would be willing to like mentor them and give them like I've talked about a little bit. I think this with you a little bit about bringing on my daughter for the child tax credit or whatever it is, like just to give her a taste to see what it's like to work in something like this, and she has some good skills. So I would probably consider doing something part-time, but giving her the keys to the kingdom, like she would have to really want to do that. I would never expect that either one of my kids has to do what I do. This is my thing.
Mm.
It's my vision, and they don't necessarily have to be like the taking it over if I ever want to retire or something. That's totally up to them. But I'm happy to train them and show them and like let them work with me in a some sort of role. But
Okay.
nobody's required to go to college if they don't want to.
Okay. Okay. Now let's talk about regular. So this is the time that we talked about the balance. It's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. What are some things that you guys do as a family to just connect? Like you work super hard Monday through Friday. Is there like a certain thing you guys do every week or a certain place you go or a certain food? Like we do pancake day. So they know every
Oh,
Saturday
nice.
we're doing pancakes. Dad's making them and we're throwing whatever in there.
That sounds fun. I might have to steal that. Well, I typically do cook them breakfast on one of the weekend days. We just built a pool, so
Oh.
in our backyard. So that has been something that until the weather has gotten a little bit cool for that now down here, but the first month of that every weekend we were in the pool. So that's a lot of fun. So doing stuff like that, like hanging out. We live in a smaller area of Orlando, so we like to go to different festivals or events that are happening in our little town or go trying restaurants. This is we enjoy going out to eat a lot.
Yay.
Within the budget, of course, because that could get really freaking expensive with
We
four
can
people. So, but that's the thing we like to do the most, I would say, is like adventuring around here, trying food,
foodies.
going to festival. We just went to the arts festival they have in our town this weekend. So that was fun. And just like putzing around. We're pretty chill people. So, we're not like outdoorsy. So, we might get in the Jeep and go drive around, go do something fun like that.
That's what's up. Okay. Now let's switch a little bit. So, well, no, no, no. Before we switch, what about you and husband? So now
Yeah.
he's traveling because I can see, and I know even in our life with my wife just being a stay-at-home mom, like we can live in two different worlds. Like I
Oh,
can
sure.
be here completely isolated,
Hmm.
and she's dealing with the kids majority of the time. So, what are some things that you guys do to make sure that you continue to connect and make it to year 19? Which let's
Listen,
applaud
I
that.
was very young when I got married, guys. Please understand. I
Yeah,
was 22 years old. I would
same.
say this is a privileged thing I'm about to say. So at this point where I'm at now, we do weekly date nights. There was a
Okay.
time in our lives where that was not financially possible or just like physically, logistically possible. In the past, we did monthly date nights. We could afford to do that. So whatever we could afford to do time wise and money wise, we always prioritize like a couple hours a week or a month. So right now we're at about weekly date nights. That's a part of the budget. So we go out usually Fridays for a couple hours. Sometimes it's on Saturdays. I pay for a babysitter for my youngest daughter
Shout
still.
out to the babysitters.
Yes, I know I have an oldest child. I know everybody asks me about that. Why isn't your other daughter babysitting her? Because I want them to be living when I come home. We're not quite there yet. So I want my house to still be up and running. And I also have a 5-month-old golden retriever that needs to be taken care of too. So it's like, that's just not going to work out right now. But it's worth the money to me to invest in that. So we do that. Highly recommend it. But we're also really good friends, he and I. Like, I think that so longer you're with someone, we've nurtured our friendship as much as we have the relationship side of things. So, We talk all the time. We are connected. Even when he's gone, we talk every day, multiple times a day. So that's another thing I would say. If you're not
You
in
know, like you dating.
yeah, but I mean, he's literally like, we're really, really good. We're at that phase of the relationship where we're just like very, very, very close, like friendly. So that's another piece of it. I would say if you're not doing that, that's just as important because it's so easy when your kids are young to fall into like a cohabitation
Yeah.
relationship because of how exhausting it is to raise children when they're that age and to work your jobs and be a human person and all the things you're trying to do at the same time. So that has what has worked for us. We that has helped us to evolve together because you evolve over time and
Right.
change. And I think staying such good friends and keeping up with each other has allowed us to like evolve together more easily.
There's your free marriage advice.
I
All
mean,
right.
I was just about to say I'm no marriage expert by any means.
Nah, I mean, you got to think to make it to 19 years
A
in
long time.
today's society, because
I know. I know.
there's craziness out there. I'm like, I could never go back. So I think that's something to be applauded, to be honored. So kudos to you and
Thank you.
your move.
We are proud
All
of
right.
ourselves for that one little accomplishment.
Okay. So let's do. I got a question for you. Okay. Now, again, you're at year 7 going on 8. So, what would you say are 2 or 3 things that contribute to your success? Like, if I did not do these things, I would like for me, if I'm not going to the gym and, and getting my prayer time in the morning, today is going to be terrible.
I know that's right, especially about the exercise part at my age. That's so necessary. Okay, 2 or 3 things that has been the biggest contributors to my success so far. I would say if I number 1 would be like just the emphasis on relationships with people in business. I cannot stress that enough. I would not be here if I didn't have an emphasis on relationship marketing, is what we call it in the marketing world. But you can call it business development. I don't care what you call it, but just emphasizing building constant good relationships with people that can either be great connection partners for you or even potential clients. And sometimes it's just great friends you have in business, but every relationship I have is led me here, like every single one to some capacity. Past client relationships, current clients, friends, colleagues, collaboration partners. That's easily been the biggest benefit. It's still my number one source of business too, like easily. And number 2, I would say is putting myself in places uh whether it be a mastermind or a conference or something where my current clients are. Like I'm having to put myself in places, invest money and time into these spaces that is a very uncomfortable for me as an introvert, but also as someone who's monetarily not there in my own company, but I serve these people. I work for these people.
Mhm.
I've had to do that, and that has had a huge impact on me. It allows me to not only build relationships, but just be in the space with these people. So I learn so much about where they're at, what are they struggling with,
Yep.
what's going great, and all this stuff. So even if I don't bring home, like, not everyone's going to hire me, you know, excuse me. But I will say it had the biggest impact on me. It allowed me to, it just pushed me to be in those spaces, but it also pushed me to be better at my own business at the same time. So I was able to develop my own company too. It's almost like being put in the deep end of a pool in some ways. And that was hugely, it was awful at the beginning. Every time you go into something and you're like the newbie, you're the lowest
Mhm.
on the rung,
Mhm.
it sucks. It feels horrible. It's so uncomfortable. But it's like when you go from caterpillar to butterfly, it's like you start that process again in your company,
Yeah.
and I came out so much better. I would not be here today without those experiences for sure. Easily.
Yeah, and I feel that because I mean, like coming back from funnel hacking live, it's the same thing. It's like,
Uh-huh.
and then marketing. that's
Mhm.
always changing.
Yep.
It's like you come home and you like, dang, that's a lot of stuff I just learned. Which one am I actually going to implement or
Right.
execute? And that's why we do so many as well, to just what are they thinking? What are they trying to do, accomplish? What are their goals? How are they using this tech? What insights are they trying to get? And
Hmm.
consequently, what can we walk along and partner with them? Because maybe I can build something that'll help support that or give them that.
Oh
So
yeah, totally.
I definitely get that one. All right, here we go. Top two or three things that being a business owner has taught you about yourself.
Oh man, that's such a hard question. That's a really good question though. I would have to say probably the number one thing I've learned about myself is just about what I really like and enjoy doing. I found out really who I was in the process of starting my business, which sounds crazy, but I was sort of lost in following like what other people thought was a good idea for a long time when I was teaching full time. And this process has allowed me to really become more of myself and be comfortable with that process of becoming more like who I'm probably meant to be, that real version of myself versus just, going along and like do it flowing, going with the flow, which I have a tendency to do. I'm not a big disruptor. So I think that that's been the number one thing. And secondly, it allowed me to kind of build better boundaries. I think the more
Oh wow, this is a
yeah,
new one.
big time. Well, when you work in service provision and you work with people who are in professional services, there's just a lot of opportunity to see like boundaries run amok, like no boundaries, and people who have their own version of what working looks like. And I think it allowed me to see what type of boundaries I wanted to set for myself. But it also allowed me to give like space for clients. Like if they want to work late at night and they want to do things different than I would, it gives me the space to allow them to have different boundaries definitions for themselves, and I can still hold mine, and both can work together. Like it can work at the same time, and I think that's been personally very helpful. It's allowed me to have a voice and be able to like say this is how I'm going to do this and not feel bad about it. And I was not that comfortable with it at the beginning. And I am much more comfortable today, 8 years later, having set boundaries, set office hours, blah, 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 all those things. Those are probably the top two, I would say, for
Okay,
me.
okay. I like that one, setting boundaries. We've never had that said on the show, so
Really? Wow.
yeah, a lot of people say a
Ah,
lot of times like that they weren't patient. We've had like I don't like to make big decisions. I want to one and done it. We
well, I don't like to
had
do that
somebody
either.
say like that they would try to find the path of least resistance, whereas the business forces them to go above and beyond.
Oh, sure. Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, we get a lot of different
I
ones.
empathize with that answer. I don't like resistance either.
It's okay, but you're still great. All right, so let's go this now. I'm kind of going off script. So I'm looking right here at my notes in the industries you serve. So to keep it general, you say professional services, but
Yep.
I see you say family law firms, financial firms, real estate, and
Hmm.
consulting agencies.
Yep.
What have you found may be a difference between all of those or a common thread? Because some people may say, well, you should, you know how they do.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
you're an agency, you should niche down, but you may say that there is a common
There
thread.
is.
Is
There's a huge commonality, and it's the customer journey, or what some people call the sales cycle. It's pretty similar for majority of people in professional services. So I can come in and I don't have to like think about building different. I don't have to. It's harder when you work in like e-commerce, but you also work with an agency, but you also work with a service. It's hard to do because the way that a customer is going to go through the marketing process from A to Z is way different depending on those industries, but they're pretty similar in law firms. Same with financial firms, how they get clients, how they sell to clients to get them to work with them, how they could do lifetime customer value stuff is pretty similar. from A to Z. The difference between them is going to be their people they serve and their problems, their desires, like where they spend their time online, where do they spend their time not online. All of those places are very different. And so that is where there's some differences. So how you might approach organic social media would probably be different for each of those clients. How you might approach business development and where those people should be, them as the CEO or the founder or the lead partner, where they should be spending time networking and doing some business development, that's going to be totally different for somebody who's in a law firm than maybe a real estate agent or even a real estate investor. They might be hanging out in two different spots. Their messaging is going to be different, big time. So those are some differences. So it's pretty easy for me because I can build out and find the best opportunities in a very similar way. But how we would approach some of those other things would be different. I would honestly make the argument that every business is unique in and of itself and thus has a unique viewpoint on their clients, their messaging, their way they do business development. So I would take a unique approach to everybody, regardless of who I work with.
Okay, so let's talk about that messaging because that's something that is probably, to your point, unique for everybody.
Yep.
Have you found that? I don't know how to answer this or ask it, but with messaging being different, what makes an agency special to really bring that out? So, like everybody knows, of course, we do CFO and accounting services.
Yep.
So, to your point, that's going to be different because our people hang, especially if we're niched, our
Mhm.
people hang out and are in a completely different mindset than like a
Yep.
law firm.
Totally.
So, if I were looking for a marketing agency, because we're going to have people here from all over the world, what would you say makes an agency a must have where you need to sign with them if they're, I don't know if it's they're asking certain questions or.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say this is going to sound kind of counter culture maybe, but you want to have somebody that is alignment with your core values. That's a must have. And then I would also say this is where I kind of will die on a hill. I don't believe in cookie cutter strategies. So if somebody is trying to push something on you that doesn't align, or you just have a sense, even if you're not, like law firms sometimes, or even some financial firms, they're not necessarily marketing savvy, but they can be aware enough about their clients to know that's not going to work. Like if you just have a sense that someone's trying to push something on you to sell you something that maybe doesn't feel in alignment for you, it's a non-starter for me. Like somebody should be coming to you and be looking at your business, your what you've been doing, what's worked in the past, where do you want to go in the next year, and be looking at you and not necessarily pushing a cookie cutter sales system or strategy or what have you on you because that's just what they sell. It may not work best for you. And so that's really important that you keep that in mind. And then I always say, number three, you must see some sort of references, or you must see some sort of like samples. Like that's a note. That's like must have. Like protect yourself from hiring people that are not going to be a good fit for you. Those are the three things I would say, like right off the bat, do those things. Doesn't mean they're bad. Doesn't mean that cookie cutter strategies are not good. But for me, I don't think it's a good idea when you're scaling. That's just you need to have a unique plan.
Okay, let's talk about the CMO role because, of course, we know over the past few years that role has got to be really popular just
Yes, it
because of the
has.
things you said for like social media and branding and
Mhm.
reputation management. So, at what point, if I am not a current agency, at what point should a company be looking to bring on that position? Because I mean, COOs are going to argue one thing, CFOs are going to argue for their keep. What makes the CMO A important, and
Mhm.
B around what type of revenue number should we look at bringing them in, if that's possible?
It is possible, and generally speaking, revenue wise, I personally believe you should be at super close to or at 1 million in revenue before you start considering bringing on a CMO. I
Oh,
am I'm very, very, very big on I want my clients to have a good profit margin. Like I actually really think that's important. And so you don't want to put yourself in a risky position where um, you're cutting your expenses to revenue to profit too tight. Like that makes me very nervous. So I that's a personal preference. So I typically work in a range of 1 to 10 million, sometimes up to 15 million. After 15 million, usually they're in a great spot to hire a full-time person. And that's the goal. We want them to be able to have a person that they can afford to pay full-time. That would be amazing. So that's number one. In terms of where you're at as a company, um, have to be in a place where you are established. You have a good, clear understanding of who you're serving and what you're doing. And there's no worries about where's the money going to come from. Like, oh my gosh, like if you're worrying about cash, that's a red flag. We shouldn't be super scared about where's our money coming from on a regular basis. Typically, the pain points that a company or a founder or a CEO, lead partner is going to have is they are usually the person that's overseeing growth, and sometimes they're also in charge of bringing the business in, getting the leads, figuring out all the growth and marketing. And there will come a time where somebody gets sick of dealing with that. They don't want to work more hours in their firm. They're not interested in they're looking long term and trying to figure out, well, how can I increase revenue with decreasing my own involvement in the company or the firm. And there's a breaking point that will happen. There's usually a fork in the road that will come up. It's usually around 1 million ish to 3 million in revenues when we'll start to see that emerge. But they're not financially prepared to hire a full-time marketing director. And that's why having a fractional CMO is a great option. It's like a third of the cost of hiring a full-time marketing director, but you get all of the benefits of having a full-time marketing director. So it's a win-win for those people, and what sometimes people call the messy middle of scaling, where you're trying to go from, oh my gosh, I'm $1 million business to I would love to be at 3 million or 5 or whatever. And how do I do that? I can't physically do it where we are right now.
okay. I got two questions now then. And I'm gonna say them here so that way in case I forget it, you'll know. Question one. So does that mean a marketing agency should have its own CMO that's not the owner? And
Mhm.
B, I'm sure some of the marketing agencies that listen are gonna say, man, you just made my job harder. Why pick a million? We can be a CMO at 500,000 every revenue.
Sure.
So what is the significance of that $1 million number? And do you believe a marketing agency should have their own for themselves CMO?
Yes. Sure. They should absolutely have that. I think if you're going to be an outsourced marketing solution, you should have that. That's just
See,
my
the
opinion.
reason I ask is
Yeah.
because we have a client that I can think of that are on track to hit over a million and
Okay.
they want to get to that 3 to 5. But
Right.
in my head, I'm like, I wonder, like, do they need their own marketing person? Because to your point, the founder and the owner is the one who's trying to do the sales and
It's
get on the
very
call.
common. Yeah. I would say yes. And sometimes, but I will say to make the argument, let's make the argument that you would want to bring in somebody from the outside. The beauty of having a fractional person that maybe is not in your company, a positive for that would be they are not in the forest of your, that saying where they say you miss the forest for the trees. When you're in a company,
Mhm.
all you're seeing is this. What the beauty of hiring somebody like me or any other fractional CMO is I get the opportunity of working with lots of different types of professional service businesses, not just current, but past. And so I have like all sorts of experiences and things that I have seen. And so I have a higher level view than probably like I'm way up here at the 30,000 foot view. It's a little harder to do. And I don't have the pressure of worrying that if whatever I decide to do or whatever direction we go in, they're going to fire. My life's going to fall apart if my job gets fired. They're going to fire me. They can end my agreement, but it's not. I don't have that same level of pressure as an employee does. So that's an argument to be made for a fractional person. I do think that an agency, if they're going to offer that service to other people, should have a strategist. Even if you don't want to call them a CMO, you should have that if you're going to offer outsourced marketing solutions. And they do need one for their own company. Marketers are the worst at marketing for ourselves, the absolute worst at applying our own
Wait,
stuff.
what?
We are so bad. I am so bad at doing it to myself. I am really
But
great.
you do it for everybody
It's so
else.
I don't even know why. Ask any of us. We're like, we're on the struggle bus with marketing for ourselves for some reason. It's just like if you were like someone who was a contractor and then you have like all these projects at your house you never finish. It's like your energy and your emphasis goes to the clients first, naturally. So I am like brain dead by the time I start applying my own strategies. But your other question about 1 million, that tells
Yeah,
me a couple things. One, that they're an established company. That's an
make
important
sense.
that's a vanity metric. I've had clients that are at like 800,000. I have one right now that's like he's going to hit a million this year. He was probably at 800 when he hired me to. So I mean that's kind of a vanity metric, but it tells me that you're established. It gives me some answers to some things. Um
Make sense.
it's not a perfect thing. I've worked with companies who were at a million and they were a hot mess and didn't last. So it's not perfect. So I would say that's one thing, but it's also monetary. You never want to invest in the retainer that I charge for this service because if you're only making, five, 600,000 a year, that might not be wise for you. Maybe the
AKA,
money,
she offers a premium service.
it's a
It's gonna
premium
be your
service.
premium results. You need to pay for premium companies.
So that's why we have other options for people who are at 500,000 that can still give them some support but doesn't kill their profit line or doesn't mean they can't pay themselves like that. I am a hard pass on people not paying themselves. I'm not big on being in the red. No, I want you to have a sustainable, lifelong, for as long as you want to have it, business until you sell it or like give it to a family member or whatever. Like I'm big on that. So I'm trying to protect people from themselves a little
Yeah.
bit. And so I will tell people no, if they're not at a certain place, I'm like, well, we have this other thing I think would be better fit. And I sort of guide them over here instead. It's worked well so far.
I just want to say it's funny when the marketing lady talks about revenues and profits.
I do. It
I'm
comes up
just
in our I actually I don't look at hardcore P&Ls. I don't, but I will ask to see um over like a year. I want to see the top 3 to 4 months in revenue, what they sold and how they sold it. So I do look at money just more as a data point to prove the best opportunity. So I love CFOs because if somebody has one, I get really good data. And if they don't, I'm usually having to dig for it myself, which is harder.
just saying, y'all. Your own peeps is telling
Just
you.
saying, you must have a CFO if you're over a million in revenue, also. Just saying.
If you want to work with her and get premium results.
I would love it. Most of mine do. I have a CFO client. He's awesome. And they make my life easy because they're so organized.
All right. I feel like that's probably a good stopping point. I probably could ask more questions, but I feel like that's a good conclusion, which leads us to the end of the call. So this is your time to tell the world who you are, what you do, and most importantly, the best ways to get in touch with you. Because they may
Mhm.
say, you know what, I'm an agency because we work with a lot of those. And they may say, dang, she's right. I don't put in that same amount of time to my own stuff and my own brand. So I need to figure out a way to get in touch with her. Or they just may be another buddy or were shared or referred to the podcast and this was their first episode and they love it. And they're like, I want to work with her. How do they do that?
Well, if I just to reiterate, I do fractional CMO work. I also do consulting. So I work with people at mid six figures, and then the CMO level is over a million. And our goal is to help people to scale sustainably. So we look for the best opportunities to help you grow and scale your business without you having to work more hours inside your firm or business. So that's our goal. That's always the ultimate success driver for us. And the best way to get a hold of me, if you're looking to learn more about what I do and you want to schedule a free consultation where we can talk about where you are, where do you want to be, and what's going to get you there, you go to my website, virtualsimplicity.co, and you will learn all sorts of info about me and you can schedule a free call. If you just want to connect with me on socials, if you're like, she's cool, I want to connect with her, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn. And then I'm also like, I show up on Instagram as well. Instagram is at Virtual Simplicity, and LinkedIn, you can just type in my name, Carrie Flynn, and it pops up.
All right. Oh, tell them this which. So we got professional services,
Yep.
aka.
So let's see, law firms, particularly
Okay.
in the family law space. So that's like divorce, marriage, estate planning, probate, wills and trusts,
All
bankruptcy,
of them.
etc. All that good stuff. And then we also do financial firms, so CFO, CPA, that type of stuff, and financial planning, and of course agencies and consultants. So like what Cameron works with, marketing agencies, consulting agencies, coaches, etc. We work with them as well.
All right. So y'all heard it here. Get in touch with her on LinkedIn. That website, tell them one more time, just in case they was scrambling to get the pen and paper.
All right, virtualsimplicity.co, not .com, .co.
Leave the M off. And can you work with people? Are you just Florida based? Are you just Southeast?
All over the US and the world. I've had clients, international clients, US clients, and of course, we'll work locally to Florida as well. We have plenty of space in terms of, I'm actually offboarding a client in the CMO, which is like super duper rare. So we are getting ready to have a space there. And then we are running a special on our accelerator, which is great for people who are at maybe the mid 6-figure range. So if you go to my LinkedIn and you go to my website, you will see details about all of that.
She said it better than I could. So, Mrs. Carrie, we thank you for thinking in our robbery to bless us here on the podcast. Guys, make sure you go connect with her. I think you can hear that she has the experience to get you where you need to go, and it's all for your good. The fact that she won't take anybody below 1 million is kudos to her for being more concerned about you than not just trying to hurry up and sell you something and take your business. So those are the kind of people that we always push people to work with, that you should want to work with, somebody integral who's going to really and truly look out for your best interest. So connect with her on LinkedIn. Go to the website virtualsimplicity.co, no M, and of course connect with her. I'm sure she'd love to hear about you. If you like the podcast episode, make sure you guys share this with somebody who needs it. And as always, we're going to do our job to try to bring you guys the best guests, the newest guests, people you haven't seen before, and let them come show you that, hey, you can be the greatest thing for your family and still build this empire. You can still keep your marriage for almost 19 years and have great relationships with your kids and all of these different things. So, this is Cameron. Thank you guys so much for checking out this episode of Legacy's Journey. We'll talk to y'all soon. Stay safe. Love each other. Peace.